little bit about stories, okay? But not just any story, how you can tell your own story and the importance of your own story. So there's a saying that we have in English that you have to know where you have been to know where you are going, where you are going. And it's not only the importance of understanding your own story, but how to communicate that story to other people, and how it's intrinsically intertwined with your passion and dreams on how you want to move forward in your future. And not only that, but when you look at some of the great leaders in history, you look at Martin Luther King, people connect not necessarily with ideas, right? But they connect with the stories of the person telling those ideas. So we've heard today some great stories. We've heard about the passion in looking at things in a sustainable way. We've heard about how to improve health issues in Indonesia. But when you were listening to those, they were telling stories. They were telling stories of a little 3-year-old, right? You were hearing the story of a man who decided to go back to get his education. And those are the stories that you connect with, and those are stories that people connect with. So today I want to talk a little bit about my own story as an example, and then also talk about how us as the U.S. government, but just in general as the world, how we can be empowered to tell our own stories. So let me start a little bit about myself. So I'm American. I was born in the United States, but my personal history is that my parents are both immigrants. My mom is from Venezuela, my dad is from Puerto Rico, and they both received scholarships to study in the United States. My mother received a scholarship from the Venezuelan government. My dad received a scholarship from some nuns, and they ended up in Missouri, right? So Missouri is in the middle, it's literally in the middle of the United States, and they met in a small town called Rolla, which is literally in the middle of nowhere, Missouri. And, you know, they were the only two, you know, it was a small community. There were not that many people who spoke Spanish, so they connected and lived abroad, but then moved back to Missouri where my sister and I were both born. When I was 8 years old, we moved to Florida, Tallahassee, Florida, the capital of Florida, where I grew up, and I began in high school wanting to be able to tell the story of many of the people I went to school with. I went to Tallahassee, Florida is in the South, so I don't know if you know the history of the United States, where there's history of slavery. So where I went to school, there was literally a train track that divided the whites and the blacks and the minorities. And I wanted to be able to tell the story about why my school was different from all the other schools. Why, just because we lived in a part of town that was not as rich, why didn't we have the same resources as everyone else? So that led to my dream to become a journalist, because I wanted to be able to be a voice for the voiceless. I also, when I was 17, my family moved to Puerto Rico, which is an island in the Caribbean, but it's a territory of the United States. So I also wanted to share that story with people, because many people do not know that Puerto Rico is a territory of the U.S. Even though most people in Puerto Rico speak Spanish, we actually are all U.S. citizens. So this led to my dream to go to the University of Missouri and study at the School of Journalism. I studied there for 3.5 years. I studied convergence journalism, which is basically looking at newspaper, television, radio. And while I was there, I started a radio program in Spanish, because I wanted to be able to give news and information to a minority population in Missouri that didn't have access to information in their own language. It was then after that I received various opportunities because of my networks at the University of Missouri. In London, I moved to London in 2007. I worked for People magazine, chasing celebrities. What are you wearing? What are you wearing? I also covered the Olympics in 2008 in China. And in 2007, I also took the opportunity to visit Egypt and Palestine with an organization called Inspired Dreams, which works with refugee children in helping them define what their dreams are and how to, it's a summer camp that I worked with. After that, I received a Fulbright scholarship to Brazil. I taught English at a university working with English teachers. I also had, as mentioned before, I had worked with the Associated Press in Brazil and also with Jazeera English in Washington, D.C. And it was really through my opportunities to be able to hear people's stories and tell them that I did a project in Brazil where I taught journalism to 40 students. And I realized that I didn't necessarily want to tell other people's stories, but I wanted to empower them with the tools on how to tell their own stories. Because when you are able to communicate your own story and you take power of your story, then you can begin to define what that is, right? So I feel a lot of times we have culture, society, politics. They want to tell us our story to us, right? They want to define what that story is. And when you're able to tell your own story, you can begin to question things. As a journalist, that's one of the things I do. I question people. Why is it this way? Why is it X and not Z? And so when you begin to tell your own story, you can begin to question why things are in a certain way. And you can also begin to understand what is your passion. And I think when I entered the Foreign Service, I became a US diplomat because I wanted to be able to go abroad and I wanted to be able to empower other cultures and communities with the ability to express themselves. So I attended the Columbia University in New York. I studied international affairs before entering the Foreign Service. This is just some pictures of graduation. And I was right before being assigned to work in Indonesia, I worked at the White House. I worked in the Office of Communications of the White House, directly working with Hispanic communications, advising the President of the United States on what messages we needed to send out to the Latino community. And it was through these experiences that I felt I had the tools to be able to enter the State Department and go abroad, where I was assigned to come here and work at the U.S. Consulate in Surabaya as the Public Affairs Officer. So just to kind of reflect back on my story, what do I want to do in the future? Especially here, how do I feel I want to contribute and assist here with the Indonesian community, specifically with Eastern Indonesia? Is that we have a lot of programs, we have a lot of tools for you to have the space to not only find out what your story is, but to share that story. At the U.S. Consulate, for example, we have a space called My America. If you ever have an idea or project or a program like this where you want to give a talk about something, we provide you that space. I also want to be able to, we have many programs where we send students abroad. So specifically, there's a program, skip this slide, called Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative. So YSEALI was started by the President of the United States, President Obama, where he wanted to link together students from ASEAN countries to be able to share and engage on issues of civic engagement, education, entrepreneurship, and the environment. And I think that when youth, especially youth between, this is for youth between the ages of 18 and 35. Who's between the ages of 18 and 35? Great. So you all can register to become YSEALI members. And what we do is we want to connect you with people from ASEAN countries on these different issues. We have programs where we send people to ASEAN countries. So we just did one on the environment, where there are actually 4 people from Eastern Indonesia who went to Malaysia, to Cambodia, to Phnom Penh and Siem Reap, to discuss environmental issues and how we can improve the environmental situations in each of these countries, how we can work together as an ASEAN community to improve the environment. Because we really believe that it is the youth of the countries, of these countries, who are going to make a difference in the world. And We also send people to the United States on programs. We have professional fellowships where we send people between the ages of 25 and 35 on programs. And we also have, for college students, where we send for 6 weeks, people do an institute. And one of the things that I've been asked about in my job is, okay, how can I get into one of these programs? Well, first you have to register. Here's the website, right? And we'll send you information when applications are open for specific programs. But one of the most important things when you apply is to be able to share with the committee, with whoever is deciding on the programs, what your personal story is and how you feel you're going to contribute to society, right? And I think that's really what sells. When people read an application, and this is also if you apply to study in the US, for example, you're not just looking at the grades or your resume, but what is your own personal story? And how does that resonate with me? What can I see in that I know that you are a leader who's going to make a difference in your community in the future? So that's why today I really wanted to talk about the importance of storytelling, the importance of telling your own story, and how powerful that can be to make a change. So this is my question to you. What is your story? I hope that in the future I can hear everyone's story, that we can engage in these communications, but that's the idea that I would like to leave today. Thank you very much.